So I recently watched Nosferatu, and everyone is glazing this movie, but I'ma keep it a buck with you. Nosferatu is amazing, but it's missing a few components that we are normally used to in a movie. There is no color, and this movie doesn't even have sound. There isn't even dialogue, unless you want to make the argument that these weird little title card sequences count as dialogue. But jokes aside, and now onto the new Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. Or should I say, Nosferatu. Maybe Nosferatua? This movie is incredible, and I am appreciating it more and more as I reflect on the movie and the journey that Eggers has been on as a filmmaker. I will get to the main event and examine the true hidden meaning of Nosferatu in a few minutes, but first let's get into the review aspect of this movie and how it compares to the original and where it ranks in the filmography of Eggers. Also, I am sick right now, so if I sound a bit off, then please bear with me. I have seen the original Nosferatu from 1922 twice. I even wrote a paper on it for a film class I took a few years ago in college, so I don't want to hear anyone calling me a casual in the comments. Alright guys, I'm still a casual, I'll admit it. The original is a great movie for its time, and it's really a pioneer, especially when you consider the fact that it's over 100 years old. You know it's got Unk status when they use a hyena to be the werewolf, since the masses really didn't know what this animal was. But nonetheless, still a great movie, given the technology at the time. Now some people, the kinds with the news caps, and who hate basically any new movie that comes out, you know who I'm talking about, are gonna glaze the original and say that it has the scariest scene in all of cinema. There's even this video on YouTube that has this title, and all the comments are like, bro, it's the scariest scene ever. I couldn't sleep for 3 days and I shat my pants so hard they became shorts. Bro, cut the shit, dude. You don't gotta act like it's the scariest scene ever, just to seem like a hardcore. You can acknowledge that it's not that scary in modern day, but still an iconic piece of film history. But nonetheless, the original has some amazing set design, and this is one of the best movies to represent German Expressionism. F.W. Murnau, the director, just does a great job with the lighting and the architecture in this film, and this carries over to the remake. And on top of this, the set design and atmosphere are always amazing parts to any Eggers movie. This new rendition expands quite a bit on the original, and you would expect it to since Nosferatu from 1922 is a silent movie so it doesn't have any dialogue. That's what a silent film is, lol bro. But it still keeps the same structure overall, it just expands on some of the characters and adds an additional layer of sophistication like you would expect it to. The characters are believable, and Thomas especially is a much bigger highlight in this movie, and he seems less naive than he was in the original. A lot of the side characters are greatly expanded, and there are even some new characters added, which is a welcome change. The cinematography really is amazing, and if this movie doesn't get a nomination, then we riot. In-game bro, in-game. But overall, I love the costume design, the lighting, the architecture, basically every positive in the original carries over to this movie, and I also love the voice and the look of Nosferatu. Bill Skarsgard does an amazing job, and the dialogue in this movie is surprisingly easy to digest for an Eggers movie. I do think he dumbed it down a bit for us, so it's easier to understand, and I ain't complaining. I love his other movies, and it's a crazy talent that he can write these scripts that sound straight out of their time periods, but Nosferatu is much easier to understand than a movie like The Lighthouse in terms of its dialogue, which is a good thing for the average moviegoer. The movie also has an amazing atmosphere where you just feel this oppressing evil force taking control of the world, which is exactly what they were going for. The movie is also a lot more explicit than the original. There were a lot of sexual undertones in the original, but this movie just fully embraces those and runs with it. There are so many sequences and shots that I love in this movie. I love the shadow of Orlok's hand devouring Wisberg, and the screams you hear as it grows bigger. I love the shadow of Orlok that we see on the curtains at various points in the movie, especially in the beginning, and I also really love the welcome that Thomas gets from the gypsies, and this scene as a whole perfectly encapsulates that superstitious Transylvania vibe. I also love the sequence of Thomas traveling to the castle. The cinematography is beautiful, and the part where the carriage picks him up is incredible. The lighting is amazing, and I'm happy they changed this scene so there is no driver. In the original, the driver is clearly Orlok, but in this, there is no driver, which reinforces the supernatural element in Orlok's ability to be everywhere, since he's demonic. I also love the part where they drive to the castle, and the location as a whole. There were also some moments that caught me off guard, and these are spoilers, so if you want to avoid it, then skip to the timestamp on the screen. I'm giving you 3 seconds. Okay, the scene with the kids dying completely caught me off guard, and part of me didn't expect Anna to die since she was the paragon in the movie who does no wrong. The fate of Friedrich and his family completely caught me off guard, and this shows that this movie is not afraid to go to some dark places. The plot point with Herr Canuck, because German is a phonetic language, we say the K's, buddy, taking the place of Nosferatu, was also a clever play, and it did a great job of setting up the justification for Ellen to be alone. This movie also has some really clean transitions, and there are some jump scares which people may not like, but I honestly don't mind them, since this movie doesn't fully rely on a jump scare to scare you. There are plenty of creepy parts in this movie that are done without jump scares. Now, where would I rate Nosferatu in terms of Eggers' filmography? Before I give my list, I genuinely want to hear your guys' list in the comments below. This isn't even a bait for engagement, I am genuinely interested because me and my friends, we had lists all over the place and we were disagreeing on which movie's the best and which movie's the worst, so I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. This is probably going to be a hot take, but The Witch is still my favorite movie from Eggers. The tension, dialogue, atmosphere, transitions, and cinematography are just perfect in this movie, so I think it's kind of impossible to top. But I know that it's probably an unpopular opinion. I think most people are going to rank Lighthouse as his best movie, followed by Nosferatu, and then Northman, then Witch. Maybe you switch those last two, but my personal list would be The Witch, Lighthouse, Nosferatu, and then Northman. But those top 3 movies really are interchangeable, and that is a good thing because it shows how great Eggers is. Northman is still a good movie, don't get me wrong, I just don't hold it to the same standard as those other 3. But please let me know your rankings down below. But now it's time for the main event, the true hidden meaning of Nosferatu. Here it is, guys. Nosferatu is an allegory on cucking. It's no secret, we live in a time where degeneracy is becoming more and more normalized. And on a real note, we really gotta put a stop to this, man. I don't think any of us want to raise our kids in this filth. But back to the movie, Nosferatu involves a man who sets out for wealth and is pressured, but also gives in to selling his wife and her well-being for the sake of fortune. We see this when Thomas gives away the locket for money, and although he thought this was an innocent gesture and that he would get the locket back, he unknowingly causes a lot of harm to his relationship. This is why Ellen freaks out and claims that he sold her for money. And on top of this, Ellen essentially made a deal with the devil, and now she is more drawn to that evil side than her own husband. Does this sound familiar? A man gives up his wife for riches and has to endure her end of the deal, which involves getting with another man. That's exactly right, Nosferatu is really about Adam 22. And if you don't believe me, then you can read this interview that Rob did with Time magazine. He says that the real-life situation of Adam 22 was a perfect embodiment of the sexual undertones and scenario of Nosferatu in the original movie, and this was his main reason to explore this conflict in the new film. That actually happened. The Adam 22 situation is also very morally gray. Adam 22 is clearly a disgusting man without an ounce of shame who sells his wife for riches, but you could make an argument that he's thinking financially about his kids and what life will be like for them in the future. Is Lena's act with Jason Love really a brazen act of shamelessness, or is it a heroic sacrifice where she will allow her and her husband's names to get dragged through the mud for the sake of the financial well-being of their family? It's like the ending of Dark Knight, where Batman sacrifices his image for the well-being of Gotham. And you can make the comparison that Adam 22 and his wife, although I don't really know if she's his at this point, if you know what I'm saying, make a similar sacrifice for the well-being of their family. Jason Love is the Count Orlok of this scenario, the overpowering lover, the unstoppable force, the shadow of darkness who engulfs this relationship. And while Lena and Ellen are adamant that they still love their husbands more than the monsters they take to bed with them, do they really? Because they seem to kind of enjoy it. Of course, the scenario in Nosferatu is tweaked because Adam 22 is seemingly a willing cuck, whereas Thomas is involuntarily made to suffer this. But after all is said and done, it seems like both are made to embrace the outcomes of their respective situations. Okay, I'll stop the bullshit here. I just wanted to give you guys a little laugh, but in all seriousness, Nosferatu is an amazing movie. I hope the Oscars have come around and are willing to embrace horror movies more than they usually do, but we'll find out in a few months. Robert Eggers had a daunting task to follow up plenty of great vampire movies from the past, but he over-delivered as usual and gave us a great period piece that isn't afraid to embrace folk legends in the occult in all of its fantastical glory. We tend to look at vampires and witchcraft as baseless superstitions from the past, but Nosferatu unapologetically presents this version of reality. I love that this movie is authentic to itself, and that it doesn't go down the road of alternate explanations to appease modern realism, but it just completely runs with the fantasy elements that are present in the original. Great movie, and I am looking forward to more of Eggers' work in the future. Easily one of my favorite modern day directors who deserves every ounce of praise.